Hey NCU students. Hey, I wanted to go through, just do a short video here so you can hear me explain a little bit about some of these comments. So as you're starting to get into week 2 and that sort of thing, maybe some of these things will help you. I want this to be a learning experience. I sense that some of you are probably frustrated through week 1. I get it. I know stats is not easy. So, but I wanted to just take a few minutes and kind of go through some of these and explain kind of what I was thinking, because sometimes written text doesn't quite do it. So let's start with number 1 here. The standard deviation of the population for questions 2, 3, and 9 versus standard deviation of the sample. Now, before I go any further, I talked with Dr. Veach, and we both agreed that we weren't going to die on this mountain. So if you got points taken away for this, using the sample versus the population, I'm going to give them back to you, okay? I'm just going to go back into the overall score for this particular grade. I'm going to add in back. I think I took a half a point off per question, so that's, if you use the standard deviation for the population, I think you should have used standard deviation for the sample, but I'm not going to die on that mountain right now, okay? So if you use standard deviation for the population, then I took off a half a point for each one of these 3 questions. I'm going to give it back to you. So I'm going to add 1.5 points back into the mix of your overall grade for this assignment. So, but let me explain to you the differences. That way you can next time make a choice. And let me see here. All right, there's my pretty screen background. And let me go to. All right, so this is just my little data set over here that I was working with. This is my little worksheet. All right, so let me move this out of the way. Just pop him down there. All right, so when you want to find the standard deviation, there's multiple ways to find the standard deviation, okay? Like many things in Microsoft Excel, there's many different ways to do it. When you just start typing in standard deviation, you'll notice that the first one that comes up really is the population, and that may be the one that most of you selected. So if I select that one, hit my range, and I get like 242 or so, 246. That's the population's standard deviation. And if I do the sample, then it's, let me go get the sample one. It's this one right here. Now, the way that I interpreted this question is different than the way some of you did. Some of you interpreted it the same way as I did, and some of you did not, and that's okay. That's why we're going to work through this a little bit. The difference you'll know is that the population standard deviation is a little bit less. The reason is because of the way the standard deviation calculation works for a sample of the population versus the entire population. If you're taking the standard deviation of the entire population, then you're going to be dividing, before you do the square root, you're going to be dividing everything by the total population value, which is 20. If you're doing just the sample, you're going to divide it by 20 minus 1, or 19, so it's going to drive the standard deviation up a little bit. There is an error correction. Boy, I forget the term. It's named after some guy who found this. There's a sample correction that you have to make if you're using sample standard deviation, or taking the standard deviation of a sample versus standard deviation of the population. And in simple terms, the correction is made by subtracting 1 from the overall number of samples that you have. So in this case, the number of samples is 20, so the inside the square root calculation, you divide by 19 versus divided by 20. The differences are somewhat subtle in the calculation, but they do make a difference. Now, when I read this, I interpreted it as of all the movies made, these are the top 20. Okay, and so therefore it was a sample. That's the way I looked at it. And some of you did as well. But again, I'm going to give you points back. There was 3 questions. I'm going to give you the points back, whether you used population or sample. I think I took off for population. Should have been sample in my opinion, but we're going to go with the other one of them this time. Okay, so that's that one. You can expect points back for 1.5 points back for that, if that's your case. A note that I had here, hey man, always explain your charts and graphs in the write-ups. When you're doing an explanation, let me show you just a sample paper here real quick. This one right here. This particular student explained data. He or she popped in the data here, explained it up here. That is the best way to do it. Embed your graphs right in the middle of the text. Explain it. Makes it really easy for the reader to see that. And so don't just leave your charts in there hoping that people will understand what you mean. That isn't the way it works. Put your chart in there and explain specifically what you want the reader to know about that chart. Okay? Let's see, the other item, that's number 2. Number 3, whenever you have an opportunity, whenever you're doing data analysis, let me pull this back up. Whenever you're doing data analysis in your worksheet right here, put notes in there for yourself, not for me. Okay, these are just for you. So as you do an analysis, like if I did this here and I popped in the mean and the standard deviation, I might do some calculations for the first, the mean plus or minus 1 standard deviation. I might make a note about that down here. That helps me remind myself later on when I'm doing the write-up what I was thinking when I did the analysis. Okay, doesn't have to be anything fancy. If I find notes in your worksheets when you submit them, bravo, good for you. No points off. In fact, I'd be impressed that you're thinking about it as you do it. All right, so let's look at number 4 about this whole scatter plot thing. First of all, there's nothing wrong with scatter plots. It's the way the book recommends that you use. I use them all the time. It's a great tool. But there's a warning. Scatter plots are really good at showing you if there's a relationship, but be careful how you interpret them because sometimes we can draw the wrong conclusions. So let me show you the scatter plots that I put together for over here, and I'll show you kind of what I mean. So let's take the opening weekend gross compared to total gross. Clearly, I mean, if you just squint at that, even without that trend line I popped in, you can see there's a somewhat of a positive and very strong down here linear relationship between total gross and opening weekend gross. All right, so those two are somewhat connected. However, look at days in release. And this is where some of you made a mistake. I just want you to see this so you can avoid falling into this trap later on. So, we did the scatter plot of gross versus days in release. We get this, and if you draw a simple trend line in there, it looks like there's a positive relationship. Who knows? This is not the way to write. This doesn't tell us that story. Another way to do it, we just do a simple line chart. This is total gross for each of the matched pairs. There's like 97 or 100. I guess there was 100, right? So for match 1, there was this total gross, and then where's the other? It's right over here. Is days in release is 135. So if you just create a simple line chart, with items 1 through 100 on the x-axis, and then you're plotting two different y-axis, one for total gross, one for days in release. You can see this is the days in release. 50, 100, 25, whatever the number is, it goes up and down. There is absolutely no relationship. This is total gross. Okay, there's nothing there. And that's why this is wrong, to draw a conclusion that there's a linear relationship. There simply isn't. Okay, let's look at another example. This one's a tricky one. First of all, if you just squint at that, it looks almost like it's curvilinear. So it's curvilinear. So it's like linear, maybe right in here. Looks like there's a curve right here. So again, you can't draw the conclusion that there's a linear relationship here. Again, if you do a line chart, similar to what I just showed you, you can see that this is the number of theaters, for each of the each of the movies, and you can see this is the gross, total gross. No relationship. This thing is going up and down like a stock market ticker, and this thing is just sinking like a rock. Okay, no relationship there. Now, if you were to analyze just this area, you might have something. Or if you analyze just this area, it's two different analyses. Okay, so it's a bimodal analysis. So anyways, my whole point is be very, very careful when you're using these scatter plots not to draw wrong conclusions. Okay. And I don't think I took off any points for that. I just pointed it out to you because I don't want you to make that mistake in real life. All right, I was generous in the whole grading cycle because like we're, just kind of getting to know each other. And I appreciate all the work that you guys did on that, so no harm there. Most of you did really well in the citations, and I can tell that you're used to using APA. A lot of them were very close. Let me pull up this paper I was looking at before I wanted to show you about this student's citations or a reference list. Okay, so this is almost right, but not quite. If you understand APA, you'll know that this is the way you do it. Normally you write the title, the work, if you will, in the way that you would write a sentence. So it would start with a capital E, and then whenever there's a full colon break, you'd always start the first letter of the next part of the sentence, if you will, with a capital A. All right, and it's always italicized for a book. Journal article is a little bit different. Check out your APA manual if you haven't seen that yet. So, all right, I think that is it. Let me look. Oh yeah, per the syllabus. This is easy points. Some of you were losing. I'm just going to call it to your attention because it's easy points to keep and easy points to lose. Right here. Centered, underlined, bolded. Boom. You got it. Okay. Center, underline, bolded. Make sure it's that way. All right. Listen, I hope this helps clarify a little bit what I was looking at, what I was doing. You guys have a great afternoon, great evening, whatever part of the day you're in right now. And I'll look for you in week 2 I'll do this again for week 2 data, and I'll put some announcements out later as well. So, all right, thanks.